Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Internet Programming and Internet Computing class. What I'm going to do today is that we are going to talk about and learn about creating consistent-looking websites. The objectives of today's class and this lecture are to learn about master pages. I will introduce master pages to you and show you how ASP.NET 2.0 and after created an elegant way of decomposing the visual look and feel of your web pages from its contents, and so you can maintain the look of your web pages in a central location, which are called master pages, and then make pages that inherit or get the look of or their appearance basically from these master pages, and their content might change. This way we will ensure that if some parts of the page would have to appear in all the pages, we could basically maintain it in a centralized location, and if we need to change it, instead of changing all pages within the entire website, we just change that centralized location and the changes would propagate throughout the website. We'll learn about base pages, and we will see about different life cycles of the page and how we can apply them to create a page class that has some sort of behaviors that all of the pages within our website can inherit those behaviors from, and we also will see how to create templates that we could reuse them, as the web form template that we have seen so far that we created and used for empty ASP.NET websites. Now we can have ASP.NET websites that we make them into reusable templates. And then we'll talk about themes and how to apply them. What are themes? What different types of themes there are, and how we can apply and use them to make visually appealing and visually interesting websites. Okay, so by now we have created several HTML web pages and also we learned about programming the ASP.NET websites and web pages. So we have seen the development of internet applications and internet websites so far. And in the project that you did, you essentially created a computer science department website, and you had links to different pages in the department, such as pages for faculty, pages for staff, and so on and so forth. And you saw that how you could use CSS or cascading style sheets to maintain a formatting control over your web pages from page to page within your websites. And also you used server controls in several of the programs and applications that we have been working so far, or essentially I should say websites that we have been working so far, to maintain a sort of semi-formatting control over the web pages. When we're building websites, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that we need to maintain the consistency of the websites from pages to pages. That is, when you want a professional looking website, or you want to have a professional appearance for your websites, you would have to make sure that when users click in links and go from one location or one page in your websites to another, the appearance of the pages won't change. And what would change essentially is the content of the page rather than the formatting and the styling appearance of the page. For example, if you have a menu in your page, you want to make sure that the menu would stay the same over all of the pages. That would make it less confusing for the users to navigate through your websites. So HTML and cascading style sheets in server controls essentially provided a great deal of control over essentially controlling the appearance of our websites. However, for the appearance of the websites that won't change, we noticed that, or you probably have noticed that you need to basically duplicate the appearance properties of your websites from one page to another, and essentially maintain these appearances within the web pages themselves. To give you an example, for example, the website for the computer science department, imaginary computer science department you created, you probably had noticed that on the top of the page you created a menu, and that menu was just a table. And then right after the menu you probably had a div section or a div tag for your content of the page. And then that would be the home page. Now when you wanted to create a page with faculty in it, you created a new web page, HTML web page, and then you put the table. You basically copied and pasted the table from the home page back into the faculty page, and then you created the contents of the faculty page by adding a new div section, for example, or a div element right after your table, and that would appear on the browser. The table that contains your menu would appear on top, and the contents would appear at the bottom in the div section. If you wanted to create more and more pages, you would have to create this, copy and paste this table at the top of the page, and essentially this is time consuming, and also it's really not useful when you need to modify the menu, for example. Let's say that you wanted to add another attribute to the table, or another item to the menu table. For example, projects, and in that case you would have to update all of your web pages within the website that contain that menu to make sure and ascertain that your menu appears the same in all pages after you update it. This is not the case after the introduction of master pages in the ASP, and we will see that how this added benefit can be used to maintain the consistency of the web pages. Before, as I said, ASP.NET 2.0, there was no template solution to creating and maintaining consistent looking websites. And as I said, we needed to make use of CSS and containers, and so we would have a header container within our file or our web page, for example, the home page, for menus, for example. And then if all of the pages needed that menu, we would just copy and paste this menu container, which would use its styling property from the CSS file, and you would copy this menu container over and over again in our new pages. And this would basically mean that you were duplicating the layout of our pages in all the pages. The problem with it is that it's time consuming, as I mentioned, and also if you make a small change to the appearance or the layout of one page, you would have to duplicate this in all the pages to make sure that the pages are consistent. Master pages solve this problem. What you can do now with the master pages is that we can quickly create a template solution, or essentially define the look and the feel of all of the pages in a universal template. When we define and create this universal look, then we can just simply use this template or create our new pages based on this master page or based on this template, and only change the content of the pages within each web page. And when you need to make a change to the appearance or the look of your page, all you need to do is to just go and make changes in those appearance changes in the master page. And because all the other content pages that we'll see what they are referring to the master page as their basic appearance, this modification automatically would take place in the entire website. So the master pages, when they were introduced in ASP 2.0, they were quickly embraced by the developers, because, as I said, it's very easy to use, it's very easy to set up, and the Visual Web Developer provides a great design time support, and also enables us to create our websites regardless of the design, and the design would be taken care of in the master pages. To some extent, master pages look like an ASP web form. Basically, they contain HTML elements that are designed for the look of the page, and those are basically your your page HTML element, the head element, and the body element. You may also include other HTML or server control elements within your master pages to control over the appearance of your pages. For example, you can add menu ASP menu server controls to your, for example, menu section of your master page, and this way you can automatically create your menu in the master page and not have to create and replace it within other pages, such as main home page or faculty page or students page of the department we created for the project. However, you need to make sure that you understand that master pages are not true ASP pages. They cannot be requested in a browser directly. If you do so, you would get an error. And they only serve as a template for real content pages, or real pages that are based on these master pages. Those pages are content pages. If you look at a master page, essentially in its first line, instead of the page directive, they use master or add master directive. And essentially the master page can have also a code behind file that you can use it in the code file. You can use the codes in the code behind file of the master page. But the main point here is that master pages are not real HTML pages. So to create regions that content pages can fill in, you basically create within your master pages content placeholder items. These are essentially ASP server controls that contain specific contents within your master page. And then in your content pages or in your real web pages, you can essentially replace the contents of this content placeholders, or basically what you can do is to put the content of the file or the page inside these content placeholders. And this way, when you run the web page, and I'll tell you how it actually works in a runtime, the pages use the master page for their appearance and use the contents you created within this content placeholder to show holders to show the content of the page. So the content placeholders need to have a unique ID, and this ID is used in your content pages to refer to a specific content placeholder. For example, if you have a main content area in your master page in which you want to put the main content of each website or each web page in, you need to give an ID to this content placeholder in your master page, and your content page, as I will show you a little later, you need to refer or to point to that specific ID. This way, at the runtime, the contents would be rendered within this content placeholder. Because these content placeholders are server controls, they need to have a run at server attribute. That is essentially mandatory for any server control that you created. We can create many placeholders, as many as we want, but in order to have good flexibility on your pages, just a few content placeholders would be plenty, and you can use these content placeholders anyway to put different contents in your pages. Just a point of advice is that the more content placeholder you present in your web pages, you need to, or your master pages, the more contents you can put in the web pages later on. But then if you need to make a change that appears in different pages, you have to make sure that you update those changes. Just for example, as an example, if I create a main content placeholder and a news content placeholder, then in the home page I can put main contents in its own placeholder and the news in their own placeholder. Now, if we want to create a new web page, let's say a faculty web page, in the main content, I can put the faculty's information. And in the news content, if I want to keep those news from the from the default web page that I created, I need to copy and paste them. Or I can have faculty-specific news that I could put in the content placeholder for the news. So what exactly are content pages? Content pages are essentially the real web pages that essentially contain normal ASPX contents. They are normal ASPX files. But the code within these files, essentially, they do not have the HTML, the head, and the body element. Their directive is a at page directive. If you look at the top of the content pages, and within that at page directive, they have a master page file attribute that points to the file that contains your master page, or essentially the master page file. The page-specific contents that you want to place in these ASPX web pages can be placed within ASP Content Server Control. So an ASP Content Server Control has a content placeholder ID, which is equal to the content placeholder ID of that specific placeholder in your master page. And then within this content placeholder, between the opening and within this content server control, between its opening and closing attributes, you can put the content or the page specific content that you want it to. So for example, if you create a content placeholder in your master page and call it main, in your home page, you could put an ASP content and have its content placeholder ID equal main. That would mean that whatever you put in this between closing and opening of this server control tag would be put inside the content placeholder called main from your master page, right? And then you can put the main properties like introduction to the department or whatnot. In the faculty page, you can create an ASP content and then have its content placeholder ID equal main, and then put the faculty information in. That way, the faculty information would be placed in the content placeholder with the ID of main in your in the master page after you created it. Here's essentially how it looks like. To the left, you have the master page, and as you see, master page has a section called header. It may contain several HTML or ASP control features and server controls pertaining to the header. It could have a H1 header that basically gives you an introduction, and you want to keep that introduction appear the same in all of your pages in the website. It has a menu to the left, as you can see. Again, this is HTML markup tags that contain several things related to the menus, and then it has a content placeholder right next to the menu. And then you have a content page, and you have the contents of your page essentially within the content page. Notice that that content page will have inside of it a content server control, whose ID would be the ID of the content placeholder from the master page. And then you can basically, when you run your pages in the browser at the runtime, the ASP.NET Runtime server would look up the master page when it's rendering the content page in the browser. It looks up the master page, it renders all the tags in the master page, and then it puts the content of the content page in the content placeholder from the master page and renders the final HTML code in the browser. And I will show you how it actually works in a little while. Okay, now I will show you here how we can create master pages, and also I will show you how to create a content page and link the content page to the master page, basically working and producing consistent looking web pages. So here I have opened a website, and it's basically MS Pages demo. And what I would need to have for this page is to create a folder called Master Pages. So I create a new folder, and I call this new folder Master Pages. And then within this new folder, I would have to create a master page file. So to do so, right-click on this folder, and add new item. And then from the new item that you just selected, basically add a master page and call this master page frontend.master. Make sure that you used C# as your programming language, and then add the master page to this folder. We create this master page file, and then we use this to base our pages on. If you notice, the directive at the beginning of the master page starts with master or at master. That tells the ASP server that this is a master page as opposed to a page that started with page directive. The language is C#, its auto wire up is true, the code behind file is called frontend.master.cs, that's a C# code, and the page inherits from master_frontend, master pages _ frontend. You have the doc type defined for it, and essentially is XHTML 1.0 transitional. You would have an HTML tag or an HTML element that this master page has. It has a head element. Within the head element, you have the title element that you can put a default title, and then you have an ASP content placeholder. This ensures the fact that you could actually place page-specific heading contents, such as CSS style sheets that might be related to pages, page-specific information and styles, or the titles or meta tags that might be directly related to each particular page, and they differ from one page to the next, so that you could place a content server control in the head element of your pages and essentially refer to them as to this as the ID of head. Content placeholder ID of head. You can put a default title in the title of your heading elements, which would appear on all of the headers that they do not have a their own content for the page specific head content in your file, in your pages. And I will talk about that a little later when I'm creating the content files. And then the master page has the body element, and the body element automatically is generated. It has a form element inside. It's called form1 and runs at server. And it has a div element, and this div element basically contains within it an ASP content placeholder whose name is content placeholder 1. I would have to remember to change it a little later. And this content placeholder runs as server. Now, this content placeholder is, again, the placeholder. Now, within your content page that I'll show you a little later how to create it, you basically need to put a content server control and then make its content placeholder ID attribute to be the attribute, the ID of this content placeholder. That makes sure that in the runtime, when you're rendering your content page, which is the real HTML file, it essentially puts the content in here. Now, notice that you have a div element here, and in order to make sure that I can use cascading style sheets essentially and create the pages that I showed you in the slides, basically having a big page placeholder, and then within the page to have a header and to have a menu and the content and so forth, I create several specific div elements or div tags and give them IDs. I use these IDs later on, as I show you, in the CSS style sheet to define the look of these elements as they are rendered in the browser. So I have the page wrapper, which controls the appearance of the page itself, and then I have my header wrapper, and in the header I would like to make it as a link. So I put an A tag here, and within the A tag I give an href of basically the root of the website, which I can use that tilde element for, and I want this tag to run at server, so I put its add attributes in, and within this A or hyperlink tag I can place just a text that says header file goes here. Next, as I said, I would like to have an ID, a menu here. So for the menu, I create a div element with the ID of menu wrapper, and I will actually talk about it when I actually show you the CSS style sheet. And this CSS style sheet would control the look and the formatting properties of all of these elements, as I will mention a little later when I actually show you the style cascading style sheet file that I'm using. So menu basically goes here, just some text. Next, I would like to create a content place, a place for the main content of the web page. So the main content placeholder essentially is within this div tags, and it contains the content placeholder here that I created in the masters page. After the main content, I would put a sidebar and a footer. So add div and give the ID sidebar to it, and just type some text. And then I'll add another div, I call it footer, and I put just some text here. Now if you look at here in the design view, look at your master page, you see that the master page is essentially pretty dull, and it doesn't have any styling attributes in it. However, I had given IDs, specific IDs, to all these div elements, and I have added a style sheet that is called menu wrapper. It's called monochrome.css. And here's how it looks like. It's in a style folder in my website, and I have already in the style sheet created the page wrapper, menu wrapper, and header, in all those ID selectors, and I have created, for example, for the header, the background is a URL. It's an image called header.jpg. I haven't added it yet, but that would be the look of my header. The menu wrapper essentially has 827 pixels, is 827 pixels wide. The main content, which is 569 pixels wide, and the sidebar, which essentially it has its own styling definitions. So I have already created these ID selectors and styles in the monochrome.css file. All I need to do is to go to my master page, and within its head element, create a link to the style sheet, and apply the style sheet to change the look of the master page, essentially do the formatting for me. So I'll go at the end of the content placeholder. I add a link element, a link tag, and its href will be the style file or style sheet called monochrome.css from the styles folder. Its relation is a style sheet relationship to the master page, and its type is essentially text/CSS. And this defines the styling elements or the styling of my master page here for me within the head element. Notice that I added this styling at the last line of the header. So if my pages perform some styling before in the content placeholder, it would be overwritten. And here's how my web page, the web pages I create based on this master page would look like. So you have the header and the menu, you have the main content, you have the sidebar, and then you have the footer. Now, how does that happen that the main content and the sidebar are placed side by side? The idea is that they are smaller than the width, the total width of the page, and they are floating objects. So if you go to the main content selector, you'd see that it is floating left. It's a floating object that floats from the left of the page. And because it doesn't fill the entire page, because its width is smaller than the width of the page, look at the width is 659 pixels wide. And if you go to the page wrapper width, you will see that the page wrapper width is 844 pixels wide. But so it's there is still empty spaces, and the sidebar is also a floating object that floats right next to the main content, and it's only 142 pixels. So 142 pixels of the sidebar width plus the width of the main content is smaller than the entire page, or basically it's equal to the size of the entire page. Therefore, the two appear side by side. So all of these elements essentially are represented using the basically the main content. So the page wrapper is 844 pixels. That is the color of the page wrapper. So that would be the entire page. The header element essentially is basically 844 pixels wide and 86 pixels high, and it would be the first rectangular area on top of the page, which is 844 by 86 pixels wide. And then you'd have the menu wrapper, which is another rectangular area right underneath the page wrapper, and its width is 827 pixels, its height is 36 pixels, and essentially it has some paddings also in it. The main content is a floating object that floats right under the menu wrapper, and it floats from the left side of the page, and it has 859 pixels wide. It is 859 pixels wide, and of course it has some paddings, and eventually you'd have the footer, which is basically a fixed element, and it is 844 pixels wide, and it appears at the bottom of the page right under both the main content and the sidebar of the page. Now, let's give this page a title, the default title of the page. So if I create a web page based on this master page, a content page based on this master page, and I don't define its title would be essentially the default title here. I can add additional information within its content placeholder in the head element and the content placeholder in the body element of the page. Notice that because I have only one content placeholder here, it would appear that in new pages I can only change the content of the content placeholder element here, and the sidebars, the footer, and everything that I put in the div elements from the master page would be copied directly to the new content pages. Now next, let's create a content page. Now to create a content page, we'll go to the main page, main website's root, and add new item. And from the new item, make sure that you have C# and click on web form. Let's give it a name. I can leave the name at default, and place code in separate file to ensure the code behind file, and then I want to make the page based on a master page. So check the box next to select master page and then press add. When you do that, a dialog box opens and asks you which master page you want to add. I click on the master pages folder and click on the folder frontend.master and press OK. When you apply that, what happens is your master pages automatically will be applied to your web page, and a page will be created with the directive add page. Its title is empty at the moment, its language is C#, and the master page that is used, master page file that is used, is basically from the root of the web page in the master pages folder frontend.master. And basically it inherits the default page properties, and its code behind file is default.aspx.cs. And what you will see in this page is basically two contents. One content is for the content placeholder head from the master pages, which is this content placeholder, and the second content is the content for the content placeholder 1 in the master pages, which is this content placeholder. Basically trying to change or put additional information within these pages. Now let's add some text to the content to the content of this page. Of the page. So if I run this in the browser, the default ASPX will be run in the runtime ASP.NET server, and here is how the page appears. The main the header of the page is up here, and when you click on it, it opens the page, the main web page. The menu appears up here. The main content of the page that I just added appears here, and the sidebar appears right next to it. And the footer of the page basically appears at the bottom of the page, as it can be seen from this view. Now to take a closer look at the master pages, we have seen that we can add a content placeholder in the main content in the master pages I showed you, and basically put contents in it. As I also mentioned, there is a content placeholder in the head element of the master page, and it contains a basically a markup view for the content placeholder. This placeholder is basically added for us to automatically be able to assign information that are page specific to pages we create which are related to its heading. We can use it to add, for example, elements between the head tags of the page, such as a CSS, which would be an embedded or external style sheet, JavaScripts, or references to jQuery libraries. And we'll see this information a little later on in the semester. The content placeholder that is called the content placeholder ID1 in the master page basically does not contain any markup value to it, or didn't contain any markup value to it when we actually created the master page. If you had created a page based on this content placeholder or based on this master page, and you removed the content, nothing would appear on the page itself. In order to put some default values or default texts to the content placeholder to the pages that we create, but we do not want to specify any contents yet, and we haven't developed them fully, we could essentially create some default information within the content placeholder in the master page, and leave the pages empty. If we do that, then those pages essentially would would show default contents. Let me show you how it works, and we create a page based on that. So let's go to the master page, and let's add some default value to its content placeholder. This is some default Now, if you run the default.aspx, which is based on this content placeholder, this master page, the values that we put in its content server control will appear in the content of it, okay? Because it already has some content, and here's the content that is shown here. Now, if I create another page, a new web form, and I call it under construction and based on the master page, and I remove its content, and if I run this new form in the browser, the default content from the master page would appear, and until I develop its content. When I develop its content, its own content will show up in the master page. Essentially, one thing, for example, that you could do is you could put an under construction image with an under construction text, for example, or this part of the website is under construction or will be developed later in the default of the master page content placeholder, and then leave these the content placeholder related to the undeveloped pages empty, and they would essentially would show up by default from the master page. Another thing to notice is the fact that you could nest master pages. A nested master page is a page that is based on another master page. Content pages that can be that we can use, we can also be based them on nested pages. This is useful, for example, if you have different areas that still share common looks and feels, but they are also separate. For example, if you have a corporate website that is separated by departments, you can create an outer master page that defines the global look and feel of the site, and, for example, corporate logo and branding elements and things like that. And then you can have different nested master pages for different departments. For example, sales departments may have a section that would be based on a different master page than a marketing department. So this would allow the integrity of the entire website, but also the flexibility of department-specific or sub-websites specific or subdomain specific formatting and design. Creating nested master pages is easy to do. You select the master page when you create you unselect the master page for your parent master page, and for the inner master pages, when you're creating them, you select the base on master page checkbox, and at that point your master pages, your child master pages will be based on the parent master page, but they will still be master pages that you could define content placeholders within them and contents based on the parent master page. Although master pages are great and useful and save a lot of work when you're developing master pages, there are little things that you need to be aware of. For example, when you start when you use ASP.NET Runtime, the runtime changes client IDs for controls in the page. For example, if you have an ID attribute that is used in a client script, for example, a JavaScript to access controls from the browser, these IDs, which are the client IDs, might be different than the IDs that you initially created within the ASP server controls. For example, just to show you how it looks like, if you have a button server control, ASP button, and its ID is B1 in ASP, when you run this in the browser, it ends up like an input tag, and its type is submit, and its name is B1, which is the same. However, if you have the same IP in an ASP, if you have a same ID for a button in the ASP content server control, the IP will be prefixed with several values when it is created as a client ID. And so, for example, here the client ID might be essentially changed to CP100 $sign CP main content, which is the ID of the content placeholder, $sign B1, which was the ID of the button. This means that the client-side code should refer to the button you created by its actual ID that has been created from the ASP runtime, as opposed to the ID that you initially gave this button. However, this is not just a master page problem. We will run into this situation when we are basically working with user controls or data-bound controls. Basically, the ASP.NET, in order to ensure the uniqueness of the IDs that are coming from several sources, in this case, the ASP content server control sources, to make sure that there's no name collision between the buttons coming from a content and the buttons coming from another server control and things like that, would actually augment the names. The second issue, which is related to this name augmentation, is that basically they add considerably to the size of the pages. So if you have small pages with very few server controls and contents and user controls and things like that, it's not probably a big deal. But when you have pages with lots of controls on them, the performance of the site might be impacted by these issues. So basically, this is a simple issue that we would have to consider when we're using master pages. To basically kind of counter these issues and make it a little more efficient using master pages, what we could do is that instead of giving these content IDs or server control IDs within the contents and the content placeholders, instead of giving them large names, we can just simply abbreviate their names so that even after their names have been added to create client-side IDs, they wouldn't add considerably to the amount of code. However, the names would change, and when you're writing JavaScripts and client-side programming referring to the client-side IDs, you need to make sure that you understand how ASP server control changes these IDs, and use the changed IDs within the codes that you create. So master pages basically are useful to create general look and feel of the website in a single location, and therefore they improve the consistency and maintainability of your site. There is another way to improve consistency, and that is to centralize the behavior of the page in the website. We can do this with a base page, and we'll discuss this now. All of the default ASP pages are derived from system.web.ui.page class, as we saw earlier, and all pages share the same behavior. Sometimes you might want to add some behavior to a page and make all of the pages in our website basically maintain that behavior and present this basic behavior. For example, we might want to have a case that we don't want to allow for the pages that do not contain titles to be rendered on the browser. We might want to stop those pages. And I'll show you an example how we can do that. Now, this is not the default behavior of the pages from system.web.ui.page class. What we can do is that we can create a class on our own, call it the base class, and have this class basically inherit properties from the page class of the system.web.ui namespace, and then have our pages inherit their properties instead of from the page class from our base page class. And here's how it looks like. So in general, our pages look like the pictures to the left or the graph to the left. They automatically inherit from the page class of the system.web.ui namespace. What we can do is that we can create a middle page subclass called base page, and then have our web pages basically be deriven from this base page class, and they would look like the diagram to the right. The way to do this is very simple. We can create a base page class in the app code folder that inherits from system.web.ui.page, and then we can make all the pages in our website inherit from the base page instead of the standard page class. Before we do this, we need to learn a little bit about the life cycle of the pages so that we will be able to implement the base page class a little bit more efficiently, because some properties or some events while a page has been requested from the browser, rendered in the browser, and all the way until its life cycle is finished will initiate in different times during this process of the page request and page rendering. And in order to create the base page class that we want to give behaviors to, we need to know what processes are happening and what are the timings in different life stages of a page throughout its life cycle, to be able to put correct events at the correct places. So the page lifecycle is essentially an 8-step process, and it contains 8 phases, and I will discuss these phases as we go on. And I'll show you what will happen at any given specific phase of this page lifecycle, and what events are raised, in which stage these events are raised, and what we can do to use these events. The page lifecycle starts with the page request phase. At this phase, a request to an ASPX page starts the lifecycle. When the web server is able and allowed to return a cached copy of the page, then the entire lifecycle is not executed. In any other situation, in all other situations, the page enters the start phase. The start phase basically is when the page gets access to properties like request and response. These are the HTML properties essentially, and you can use to interact with the page's environment. All of the data that you add or you put in the controls in the page will be, or the interaction will be happening by the response and request properties. In addition to this, during this phase, a pre-init event is raised that signals the page is going to go to the initialization phase next. We can use this event essentially to perform operations that we want to basically be among the first operations that are happening on the page. For example, checking for the title of the page, seeing if the title is missing, and therefore stopping the page from being rendered on the browser, or essentially even being sent to the browser. In the pre-initialization phase, the controls that we have set up in the page will be programmatically available, and the programs for the controls will be able to essentially run. Additionally, the page class fires 3 events in a sequence: init, init complete, and preload. So basically what happens is that first the init event will happen. You could put within the init event the initialization tasks and programs. The init complete event will happen next. Basically, you can put init complete information, sending a message, for example, and the preload. The preload is also one of the earliest events in the page cycle, and we have seen that preload is automatically added to all the code behind files that we had been working with, and we had left it empty in most cases. During this phase, the control properties are also loaded from the view state and control state during the postback. So for example, when you change the selected item in a drop-down list and then cause a postback, this is the moment where the correct item gets pre-selected in the drop-down list, which you can then work with in your server-side code. The next phase is the load phase. During this phase, the page raises the load event, and you can use this load event to essentially perform tasks that belong to the middle part of the page lifecycle. The validation phase is next, and validation controls are used in this phase, and you can use this to basically process and validate inputs that are given by the users. For example, if there is a text box that needs to contain an email address and you want it to be an email address, you can control that text. And we'll see that the validation of user inputs in the next couple of weeks. The post-back event handling phase is the next phase, and during this phase the controls in the page may raise their own events. For example, the drop-down list may raise the selected index changed event, and then you can use this to code and essentially to work with the data. A text box may raise the text changed event, at which point you can basically write a program that needs to perform tasks when the text in a text box may change by a user. When all this event processing is done, a load complete event will be raised, and during this phase a pre-render event also is raised to signal that the page is about to render to the browser. Shortly after this event, save state complete event is raised that indicates that the page is done storing all its information within the view state, all the information from the server controls within the view state. The next cycle is rendering. At this point, all the controls output their HTML tags in the browser, and finally the page lifecycle ends with an onload, basically cleaning up the process. At this moment, if you have controls, basically they could release their resources, such as a database connection and so forth. One thing that's important here is to realize that all of these events are happening at the server, not at the client. So even if you change the text of a text box at the client side, the text changed event for the text box will fire at the server after you have posted back the page, which was in the post-back complete phase. So why do we need to know about this page lifecycle? The biggest reason is to have some understanding of the page lifecycle, and basically know that certain actions will be performed at specific stages and specific timings in the page lifecycle. For example, if we want to dynamically change the theme to basically be able to allow the user and server controls to, if needed, to override these properties, we perform this early on in the life cycle of the page. Or if you want to enforce the theming of the website, basically not allowing users or server controls or programs in the code to have access to the looks of some the web pages and their controls, we could perform the theming process at the later on in the page lifecycle, basically overriding all the previous styling changes to the pages. So that would be something that we will see a little later, but the question would be, for example, why, if we need to change the theme of the page, we need to do this early on in the process. And the answer to this will be as a part of the discussions for this week's class. Now, at this point, let's implement a base page. And it's very easy. We can just simply add the base page into the app code folder and add some code to it, and then that will be the end of creating a base page. And then we can have our pages derive or inherit from this base page. The part that is a little bit more difficult is to make sure that each of the page in the site inherits from this new base page instead of the system page. There is no simple way or configuration to basically do this automatically in the code behind file. So we need to modify each page manually. However, if we export the pages, basically create one page and export it as a template, then we can reuse this template when we're creating new pages, and I'll show you in the next series of examples how to do this. And by exporting this template and reusing it, we would not have to automatically or manually inherit pages from the base page we created. The template would inherit from them. All we need to do is to modify the pages to our own desirable looks, and also the naming of the files. So let's create a base page that inherits from the main page, and then create a template out of it, and make sure that the page would not render on the browser if the title page is missing, or if the title of the page is missing. Okay, so here we are, and we want to create a base page. To do so, right-click on the root of the file and select the add ASP.NET folder and add a app code folder to your solution, and then on the app code folder right-click and add new item and choose a class, and let's give this class base page name, and make sure that it's C# and just add it. Now we need to change the properties of this base page, so delete all of this text here. Actually, I just modify them. I keep system.web and system. I keep the summary, and I have a public class which will be essentially named base page, and I make it inherit from system.web.ui page. So it's inheriting from the page, and I would need for this page, as I said, this will be used to basically prevent rendering of a page with no title. So to do that, as I said, it has to prevent the page from going to the browser or to the render phase, and that would be the pre-render event that will be initiated when the page is going through its life cycle, essentially after the post-back complete phase, or at the end of the post-back complete phase before the render phase. To do so, you need to create a pre-render event handler, and that would be a private function which is void, and what you have in it is basically the name of the event handler, which is pre-render. As I will talk about a little later, these event handlers essentially get as input a sender object, which essentially is the object or the entity initiating the event, and arguments, which are event args. Now, within this event handler, you want to throw an exception if the title of the page is either an untitled page or is empty or is null. So how can you check that? First of all, notice that this page or any page that has been inherited from this page will have a title property or a title attribute. To check that, you could use the keyword this, and which points to the current object being processed by the web server, and then refer to its title. So you need to create an if statement, and if that happens, you need to throw an exception. So throw exception is basically the command throw new exception, and the exception that you will your browser will, or your web server would initiate is basically prints on the web browser window the page title cannot be untitled page or an empty string. Okay. Now here, what happened here, if the condition that I will talk about later is fulfilled, the system will throw an exception, a new exception. And I won't talk about exceptions. Those are advanced topics, and you can study them from one of the recommended books that I gave you in the syllabus, or basically study them from sources on the ASP.NET programming from the internet. And what it is that it would basically show you this text. Notice that I wanted to put the untitled page in double quotes. If I put quotation mark in C#, it would be a special symbol which C# uses to distinguish between strings and non-string elements. In order to put the double quote, you would have to augment it with a backward slash. If the C# parser reading this statement reads a backward slash, it goes into a mode that is looking for special symbols. And in this case, it is a quotation. And both of these together would represent a quotation mark in a string variable. And same thing for the other quotation mark, as opposed to the closing quotation mark right here and the opening quotation mark right here, which indicate the beginning and the end of a string. So now that exception can be raised and thrown, what are the conditions? So I want to check the title of the web page that is in the pre-render phase, or basically the page or the object that raised the pre-render event. So to process the current page or the current object, the keyword this can be used. And because this refers to a page, it would automatically show me properties and attributes and methods from a page object. And so the property that I'm interested in is title. So I want to check the title, see if the title is untitled page, or consequently if the title is empty. In order to check the title, the title to see if the title is empty, I can use the string object, and I call is null or empty method on it. And I apply this is null or empty on the title of this page. So these two conditions check to see if the title of the current page or this page is untitled page, or if the title of the current page or this page is null or empty, basically is a string that doesn't have anything in it, or it is set to be null. So now that I have my page in its pre-rendering phase or event, check its own title, and based on its title throw an exception or let the process go through. I can also use the pre-render event here that I created to essentially use the page pre-render property. To do this, I need to make sure that the pre-render function or pre-render event for this page has been properly set. So I can create a new event handler which will point to the function that I created above, which would be page pre-render. And this will complete the entire process. Let me go over again to tell you how I created this class. Now, this class was supposed to be the base class of my project or my website, and this base class is supposed to throw an exception and stop the page being rendered if it doesn't have a title. To do so, I need to create an event handler that would run at an appropriate time. The event handler is a private function that is only accessible within the page itself. It takes as input a sender and an argument. It's essentially a function, and the function checks for the title of the current page. If it is empty, it throws an exception. If it's not empty, it basically doesn't do anything and lets the process of the page lifecycle go through. To assign this event handler essentially appropriately to the page itself, I would have to modify the constructor of the page, which is this public base page function here. And what I can do is that I can add to the pre-render event of the page a new handler or a new event handler that is written within the pre-render function or page pre-render function that is essentially defined by me up here. So whenever you want to create an event, essentially an event handler, you need to go through the same process. So it's a two-step process to create event handlers. Let's say that you want to write some code that would work in the pre-init event of a page. What you could do is that you could create a function and assign it to the, for example, pre-init. Here we did pre-render. You could assign it to the pre-init event handler series of the current page you're processing. And then the function that you created, you could basically use the same name as the event handler and basically write in the code that you would like to run. So this two-step process is taken, and this would ensure that this event handler will run in response to this event of the current page being processed by the web server. Okay, so let's save the page here, and let's go to the default page. And in the default page, you see the title of the page is basically empty, so it doesn't have any title. If I run this page, I believe I have changed the title in the master page. Yes, let's remove this title. And now let's run the default page. Oh, I know what happened. The page is still inheriting from the system. Let's inherit from the base page. Okay, now the page is inheriting from the base page. So you need to go and change the page class from the C# code. And then let's run this page in the browser. And there it is. It actually runs the exception that tells me that the page title cannot be untitled page or an empty string. So one way to deal with it is to go and change the title page to this is the home page, and then run the page, which would run, and in the title it shows that this is the home page on the title of this page, either on the tab in the browser or as the title of the window that it has been created. Let's see what would be the effect if we change the title from the instead of the title of the page here, we do that from the master page. So in the master page, the default title. Go to the default, and as you see, that default title from the master page did not actually change anything within the page itself that we created. So all we need to do is to go and redefine the title. And so since the page has been based on the base page that we created, when you actually run the page and you create a new page and you do not give it a title, then it would show the exception. Otherwise, it would let the page run and get rendered on the browser. Okay, now as you saw, if we want to create new pages, essentially new web pages, based on the master page, we could do so, but then we would have to go to their code behind file all over and make them inherit from the base page that we created. We could create reusable items and reusable templates here that would allow us to essentially generate web pages based on some ASP.NET template files that would inherit the code behind file properties and also the properties from the master pages. Now, to do this, let's create a temporary file. So click on Add Next Existing Item and call this temporary file and make its Visual C# language, code behind file, and select master pages. Add and then select the front end as the master page and click OK. So the temporary file has been created. Give it a title, default title, and it also contains default information. Now open the code behind file of this title file, this temporary file. So open it and then double click on C#. Make the inheritance of this base page as opposed to system.web.ui.page. Okay, now notice that this is essentially creating a temporary file, which is basically a file here. What you need to do is to make sure that you give it a sort of alternative name that your web server would be able to understand and work with. And for doing that, we need to create a partial class with this temporary name. Now notice this this name that you created here would create compilation errors. But when you add a web page based on this template later on, its name will replace this entire name here, which is basically relative URL namespace, safe item name, and that way you make sure that you won't essentially you redirect your Visual Web Developer to make the correction and replacements to your template. Now let's go back to the template file.aspx, a temporary file.aspx, and let's also make changes to the inherit attribute of this template. So inherits should be $ relative URL namespace _ safe item name. So in this case, when you perform this operation, your Visual Web Developer will change the right code behind file automatically when you essentially add a new page to this website. Okay, let's go to the code behind file here, and let's just add a comment. All right, now let's save everything here and go to File, and then go to Export Template. When you do that, it would create a item template. You need to create an item template, and you would want to create from this project, and you want it to be based on C#, and then you want to click Next. And you want to export temporary file.aspx, and then click Next. And there's no need to do any more changes here. So add a description, and you won't have any icon image or any preview image, and automatically import the template into Visual Studio and display. Change the name of this template to My Base Page Template, and you're done. Press Finish, and it would create a zip file where the template is being created. Now go back to this Visual Web Developer, and let's delete the temporary file ASPX that we created, and then we can right click on the website and add new item, and now you see on top of the page you have My Base Page Template that has been essentially created for you, and you can now use that within your Microsoft Visual Web Developer to add files. Now let's type a test page, test template page for the name, and click Add. Now when you press that, you will see that the title of based on the template that we created, a test template file, that is the name of the file I gave it, based on that template has been created. Notice that at the beginning of the file you have the page directive with the default title, which was given in the template that I just created there, and the name of the file that was to be used essentially is also automatically changed to the name that I gave it, that is test template, as opposed to the name with those $signs. And if you go back to here to the code behind file of this test template, that signs and relative URL namespace and everything has been automatically changed to the name of this this file. Now this file is automatically basically inheriting from the base page, and since it automatically has from the template a default title, it wouldn't raise the exception because it already has a default title given to it from the template. If I remove the title, it would raise the exception because it's based on the base page as opposed to the system.web.ui .page namespace. So just to recap, in order to create a template, you create a ASP.NET file based on the master page and other pages that you have. Then you go to code behind file and make sure that you create a relative namespace, relative URL namespace for it. If you need to basically make your class based on your base page that you created, you will do that, and then export this as a template. And once you export it as a template, then you can create pages or create new items from this template. It would be automatically used in your ASP.NET, in your Visual Web Developer. Another point in terms of the relative URL namespace and the safe item name that we put in the code behind file and in the inherit property of your page directive of the temporary file that you created, is that the Visual Web Developer would replace relative URL namespace with the name of the folder, which would be the root of the site if the file is in the root, and its safe name item or safe item name with the actual name of the page. If you create a test page.aspx, then the name of the page would be or the inheritance file would be or class would be essentially test page, which is here the test template. And so if you notice here, the test template is the name of the ASP.NET web page, and because it's in the root, there's no folder or relative URL, so there's nothing added before the underscore at the test template. The previous example showed us how we can create template pages with correct markup in their code behind file that inherit from the base page, and how we can easily use them to create new web pages in one single shot. So we needed to take a little time and a little work to create the template and create a way to name the file basically with the relative URL namespace. That's the folder where the file is located, and the name of the file. And then basically use this template to create consistent web pages. So far, we have seen how to create a master page to define the global look and feel of the pages in our website, and also how to centralize the behavior of our pages by using a central base page and the templates. There are many more ways to influence the look of the sites, and two of them is basically using themes and skins. we can talk about we will talk about the skins later, and this week I will be able to introduce you to themes and the different types of themes and how we can use them in our websites. Next week I'll show you how you can programmatically apply changes and themes to your pages, and also how to extend the themes by using skin files. And finally, we will, and then we move on to user input validation using validator controls, and we end this semester with Ajax and jQuery. But what are themes? A theme is a collection of files that define the look of your page. Basically, they include skin files, CSS files, and images. And you define these themes in a special folder that's called app themes folder in the root of your website. And within that folder, you create one or more subfolders which will contain images, CSS files, and skin files for your theme. And I'll show you how we can actually use them in our web pages. Each of the CSS files in the themes folder can be linked by a link tag in the page's head section when you have an active theme, and we'll see how it actually works a little later. If you have images in the theme folder, you can reference them in your CSS files, and that way you can essentially integrate everything in terms of the images, backgrounds of the pages, and content placeholders, and every bit of formatting and styling that has to be dealt with in your website. So, to create a theme, as I said, we create a app themes folder, and then we place subfolders for themes in it. We put CSS files and any other types and various components for a theme to it. And finally, we basically add the skins, if you have skins that we need to use in our website, and then we enable and apply these themes with two different options. There are two different types of theme properties that we can use. The theme property and the style sheet theme property. Both of these properties use the themes that we define in the app themes folder. The theme property and the style sheet theme property look very similar, but at runtime their behavior is very different. The style sheet theme property is applied very early in the page's lifecycle, shortly after the page instance has been created. That means that an individual page can essentially override the setting from the theme by applying inline attributes on the controls. So for example, a theme with a skin file that sets the background color of a button to purple can be overwritten by declaring an inline style, making the background color of the button red in the ASP button server control markup tag for it. The theme property, on the other hand, is applied later in the page lifecycle, effectively overriding any styling property and enforcing the look of the page according to the theme for all of the individual controls in the web page. Because properties of the style sheet theme can be overwritten by the page, and the theme property can override any of those properties, they serve as distinct purposes. We can use the style sheet theme property if we want to apply default settings to our website and allow the users or individual server controls to change their appearance, and the pages also to change their appearance. So the style sheet theme can supply defaults for controls, which can be overridden at the page level control or at a control level inline styling. Because on the other hand, the setting of the theme property cannot be overridden as opposed to style sheet theme, we can essentially use the theme property to assure that all the controls look the way that they are defined in the theme. There is only one exception in this fact, in that if we don't want the theme styles to be applied on an individual control, we can make its enable theming property false at the control level. There are three different ways that we can apply themes to websites. We can apply them at page level, at the website level, and by setting them programmatically. At the page level, you can apply the theme at the page directive. So you can, for example, have the at page directive, have all the attributes such as language, auto wire up, code file, and all the way down to theme, which will be, for example, in this case, dark gray, would be the name of the theme subfolder, dark gray, within the theme folder. We can set them at the theme at the site level by putting the pages element. This is wrong. It should be pages element, not page element here, and make the theme essentially dark gray at the page level in the system.web tag of the config web.config file. And finally, you can program them and set the themes. And we will see how it works later on when I show you an example of letting users essentially change the theme of their websites. Now let's create and apply some themes to our website. Okay, notice that I don't have a theme subfolder, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to right-click on the website root and add ASP.NET folders, add themes. Automatically, an app_themes has been created, and it's been called theme1. Now, I'm not going to create a theme from the scratch, but I have already a couple of themes created for me. So dark gray and monochrome. So I drag them in the app_themes folder, and as you see, the dark gray is essentially, it has a dark gray CSS style sheet, and it has images, and the monochrome has a button skin, a monochrome.css, and it also has images. So let's go to the master file, master page, which would be right here. So make the styles, which is the monochrome webconfig file. Open the webconfig file and go to system.web, create the pages directive, and make the theme equal monochrome, and close. So now the theme has been applied. Now if you go save the file, go to the default and run, and here it is. The monochrome theme has been applied to the page, which contains a header and the menu, which is basically different looking, and the content and the sidebar have been shown here, and they have already the background colors set up in the themes style sheet. And so if I double click on monochrome style, you would see that, for example, the header has a background color that is from images/header.jpg. So let's go to the master page, and here you would basically link the style sheet as app themes. Actually, let me change this automatically. So it would be from app themes, monochrome, and it would be monochrome.css, and this would ensure that my styling is working properly from the style sheet itself, not from the styles file or styles folder, but rather it comes from the theme itself. Now let's make changes to the theme at the page level. So let's go to the web config and delete this. Okay, now let's change the theme from the page level itself. So go to the theme, dark gray, and here it is, the dark gray theme. And if you wanted to make changes, you could basically go here and make this at the page level to monochrome. And here you would have your monochrome theme. Oh, actually you need to go to master pages also and make sure that you change the link to monochrome instead of, go to app themes, go to monochrome, choose the monochrome.css, and here's your monochrome theme. Okay, now let's move back to our website and make the theme changes at the web config. So that would be that it would be applied to all the pages in your website, so it wouldn't be page specific. So we need to open the web config file, and in the web config I'll again go on and put pages directive theme equals monochrome. Okay, so this is how your static theme would basically be applied to to the web pages. Okay, so here we are at the end of the lecture. We have created the a master page. We created a content page. We used the master page and content pages essentially to create a consistent looking website. I created another web page based on the master page in the beginning and showed you how the two pages would look alike. And then we talked about templates and base pages, how we can create behaviors for our web pages. We talked about different stages of a page lifecycle, from the moment that it's requested from the server to the moment that it is rendered on the browser to the moment that it has been closed and it has been unloaded. Then we saw how we could use the stages of a lifecycle to put events and event handlers in. And then I talked about themes and how we can apply themes to make changes to our website, to the visual appearance of our website. I have put a discussion online, and I also have put another programming project for you, which asks you to implement that website that you created for the CS department that we did for the first project, and use master pages and content pages now for these two websites to create a header, a menu item on top, a main content at the bottom, and a footer at the very bottom part of the website. And then for each page within the website, you create a content page.